For today's second bull run, I'm only going to be showing the western part of the map. This is looking east. What you see on the screen is what Lee and Pope will be able to see themselves. Unless the battle takes a dramatically different turn, this is where it gets fought. Farther west of here, Federal units will be coming on. Early morning, Sigel and Pope begin maneuvering behind Stony Ridge. Stuart sends Fitzhugh Lee around the Confederate right with orders to harass and trouble any Federal reinforcements from that direction. Stuart himself crosses the Bull Run. Stuart believes the Federals will be coming up the Warrenton Turnpike, and he means to harass them. Porter's Corps is found arriving on the New Market Road. Heintzelman is coming up the Warrenton Pike. Stuart spots the dust on the Warrenton Turnpike. Somebody's coming down the line. Jackson's men are ready for the assault they know is coming. Jesse Reno's 9th Corps is seen approaching. Porter races forward to join Pope. Southern cavalry appears west of Newmarket by the Wheeler Farm, to the consternation of Porter and Pope. Heintzelman's Corps races ahead and deploys behind Buck Hill. Sigel's Corps activates. Sigel confirms with Heintzelman and tells him to bring his corps up on his left. He opens space for Heintzelman's Corps to fit in the line, and Pope eases his corps forward. Sigel's Corps has blocked Reno's Corps from their intended route. Reno leaves the road and makes his way around the Union left. Stuart moves west to see what kind of trouble he can cause, and spotting Heintzelman's column stretched out on the Warrenton Turnpike, he gets excited. There'll be some trouble to cause here. Seeing all the dust clouds behind the Union forces, Jackson is getting nervous. Where are Lee and Longstreet? Pope orders Porter to swing around to the Union left and push the Confederate cavalry out of the way. Lee and Longstreet appear. Jackson is pleased that Hood's Texans are on his right. Heintzelman gets word that there's Confederate cavalry in his rear. His corps is stretched out in road column. Sigel is dismayed to see Heintzelman disappear. Fitzhugh Lee's cavalry rides off. Pope is dismayed. It's midday. None of his troops have attacked anyone, and his line is falling apart. Heintzelman sends Hooker after the Confederate cav and pulls his artillery up on the hill. His artillery loggers moved with stunning alacrity. Jackson gets ready to add Lee to his line. Porter continues pushing forward. Pope assures Sigel that Reno is coming up. Sigel charges forward. Fitzhugh Lee falls back. Stuart's cavalry fell back from Hooker's men, and now they head off, searching for easier pickings. And they get within pistol shot of the rear of the Yankee baggage. Porter orders his men forward, and the Yankees race to bring their bags into the fold. On the Confederate right, Longstreet forms up. And now, the first heavy combat of the day. Sigel's attack was bloodily repulsed. Their canister unleashed, A.P. Hill was able to pull the artillery to safety. It's early afternoon. Heintzelman's entire corps is deployed chasing after Confederate cavalry, and Reno races to bring his corps into line. Porter keeps pushing. Fitzhugh Lee continues to slowly fall back. Longstreet's corps continues to form up. Jackson, sensing the Federals are off balance, attacks. Sigel struggles to hold the line. He's not going to give it up. He launches skirts into the fray. Pope orders the Union bags up to Henry Hill. And now, mid-afternoon, combat explodes on Stony Ridge. The Southern assault was driven back, but A.P. Hill's men got a foothold on Stony Ridge. It's now late afternoon. Fitzhugh Lee goes around the Union left. Longstreet's artillery fires on Porter's men, dispensing trouble, and his corps rushes forward. Porter's men fall back. Reno orders his men to charge. Heintzelman's men, after a merry chase, are joining the Union Army, and they won't leave Stuart alone. Sigel attempts to push back A.P. Hill's men along Bull Run. He readies his artillery to move out. The bags fall back, and Pope pulls his men back to Chinn's Ridge. Jackson reorders his line along Sudley Mountain and deploys bags. It's early evening. Last chance for action today. Longstreet lunges forward. Fitz-John Porter continues to fall back. Pope moves to save Chinn's Ridge and orders a flank attack. And detachments, out of command and not sure what to do, simply spread out in an attempt to cover the rear. And Sigel strikes the Confederate left. Jackson dresses his line. All chance for easy glory gone. Stuart preys on the Federal line. Reno's 9th Corps attacks. And Heintzelman races to the aid of the artillery. Last combat of the day. Fitzhugh Lee's charge on Porter's men. The Union flank is driven in. Pope's counterattack on Chinn Ridge. Initial efforts see the artillery pulled to safety, and as the Federal troops prepare to attack, the Confederates simply fade away. Jackson's Corps on Sudley Mountain. The day ends, and the next steps are not clear. Lee does not want to fight an offensive action, and will order Longstreet to retreat during the night. What will that leave for the following day? Now it's time for night moves. Reno's 9th Corps is exhausted, and he pulls his troops off Sudley Mountain. Heintzelman moves up and dresses his line, and calls Hooker to come forward. Longstreet's Corps pulls back in the night. Stuart races back to help Jackson. Porter dresses his line. Pope unpacks bags, rallies some troops, moves some artillery forward, and Jackson spends the night rallying his troops. And now it's day 2, turn 1. Stuart advances to screen the southern right. McDowell arrives with the Army of Virginia 3rd Corps, Ricketts Division, and more artillery. Heintzelman converges on Stony Ridge. Reno's 9th Corps assaults Sudley Mountain. Ideally, he would have liked to wait until Reno was ready to join him with the attack, but it's delays like that can delay an attack till it's too late. Next, Sigel moves the Army of Virginia 1st Corps to attack. With Skurtz's division providing an effective screen, he moves his artillery up on the hill by Sudley Springs. Porter pursues Stuart's cavalry. Jackson is desperate. A.P. Hill warns of the artillery. On the hill, Jackson says, "I expect you to beat them." Now in this combat, this is artillery, and artillery can't back up infantry, so it's of no use here. But A.P. Hill can fall back behind the artillery and let the grape play havoc with the advancing Federal troops. It does some damage on the troops filing up the road, and Skurtz falls back. And D.H. Hill flanks the Federal assault. At least he would, but that will leave his bags exposed. If Skurtz recovers quick enough, he can capture the bags. So D.H. Hill must let that opportunity pass and move to guard the bags. And now Longstreet's chit has been drawn. He's going to hold off. Let's see how these opening attacks do. The Federal Army is so disorganized, they may never be able to get a decent attack going if these attacks fail. Lee waits. Speaking of combat, the Federal assault on Sudley Mountain. Fighting is desperate, and no one is left in control of Sudley Mountain. It's now mid-morning. Jackson pleads for Lee to get Longstreet into the battle. Reno rallies what's left of his corps and charges. And Jackson desperately continues his hot fight. Porter continues to pursue the cavalry. And Sigel's corps attacks. And Stuart continues to draw the northern infantry away from the main battle. McDowell's remaining elements of Army of Virginia 3rd Corps race ahead, but they'll run into traffic. Pope moves the artillery into Groveton and advances his line. Heintzelman's 3rd Corps races over Sudley Mountain. And now Lee has to decide. Jackson is desperate. He's calling for troops. Has he delayed too long? Should he just have Jackson abandon the position? Or should he race on and attempt to turn the tide? You know, if this were a campaign game, I'd be inclined to pull Jackson off and save the army. But Lee decides to rescue Jackson and sends in Longstreet. He's going to gamble on beating the Federal Army. At Jackson's insistence, Hood's Texans are racing to Sudley Mountain. The rest of Longstreet's corps is getting on as fast as it can. And now Jackson's desperate combat around the bags. The flanking unit is driven off. This combat here, very interesting. You've got 2 spent divisions attacking a fresh elite division. This is A.P. Hill, and he's fresh. And now it's looking like Jackson might have been able to hold on his own. Don't know. Depends how the dice fall. But with Lee coming on, now the Federals have the luxury of taking a defensive stance. They just have to keep the bags out of rebel hands. Late morning. Stuart holds, and Fitzhugh Lee's troops finally get a chance to recover. Sigel sets up his artillery west of Sudley Mountain, and now he can start shelling Jackson's position. Jackson rallies his corps. Let them try, he says. Reno gets message from Pope that he wants everyone to fall back. His exhausted troops are only too happy to comply. Heintzelman's corps falls back. Pope and McDowell move to Henry Hill and set up headquarters. Porter's corps falls back towards Henry Hill, and Longstreet begins deploying his corps. And now it's late morning. Heintzelman extends his line, occupying the old rail line where the battle started yesterday. Jackson moves his artillery to better ground. Reno establishes his position on Stony Ridge. Stuart cautiously advances on the Confederate right. Porter secures the Federal left. Sigel reluctantly withdraws from a position he struggled to get into. McDowell dresses his line, and Union artillery opens up on Confederate troops, driving them back. Longstreet dresses his line, and now it's midday. Lee did not want to get into an offensive battle. It looks like that's what he has. The Confederate generals meet to discuss their strategy. The Union army is fresh. Lee arrived too soon. They had not exhausted themselves enough fighting Jackson. After much arguing back and forth, Lee, Longstreet, and Jackson all agree they've got to finish this. Their men are chomping at the bits. Lee does not believe the Union army has the will to face much more. They decide to push. Heintzelman screams for help as he's taking the full brunt of the Confederate assault. Sigel pulls back his artillery to a new position and flanks the Confederate assault. McDowell, reddening for a possible Union collapse on the right, pulls in his line, and Pope positions artillery on Buck Hill, and Stuart's cavalry disappears from Union eyes. Fitzjohn Porter sends detachments forward looking for the Confederate cavalry, and brings his corps to bear. Jackson's men drive forward, and his artillery opens up on the Federal artillery, driving it from the hill. And Reno's corps outflanks the other attack on Heintzelman. Once again, a major battle opens up on the abandoned rail line. The outflanked Southern troops fall back, but A.P. Hill's flank attack on the Union right yields victory. It's early afternoon, and the entire Union command meets on Henry Hill. What to do? We've got to hold. Lee will not relent. Stuart guards Lee's right flank. Reno sets his men to defend the HQ behind Stony Bridge. McDowell bolsters the defense of Stony Ridge. Longstreet accelerates the assault. Porter is sent to control any hanky-panky on the Union left. Sigel's Army of Virginia First Corps is totally destroyed and will be of no more use today. However, Heintzelman's troops are still in it. Army of Potomac Third Corps. And Jackson moves out to take command of the Confederate assault on the left. Now we have the combat in the center. Lee inflicts heavy losses, pushing the Yankee troops back. Unless the headquarters and their staff are going to hold off the whole Southern Army, they're going to have to relocate. It's late afternoon. Pope has the artillery recover, and he pulls back the packed baggage trains. And Fitzjohn Porter puts the hammer down. Union headquarters pulls back. Reno's men recover, and Stuart's cavalry fades away. Longstreet rides out and urges his men on. He places his artillery on Stony Ridge. And after sending A.P. Hill like a mad dog on the Union troops, he brings the rest of his troops forward. McDowell pulls his exhausted men off the line and dresses his line to protect the bags. Heintzelman's troops escape Jackson's trap, and the combat in the center erupts. And here it is after dinner, and here's where it stands. The North has lost 6 blocks. One more block, and the South wins. The South has not lost a block yet, but they are now operating far from their supply. They have a lot of spent units, whereas the North is falling back on their own supply. Their units are fresh. This will be very tough. It's still anybody's game. With the Northern bags unpacked right here, they can't fall back anymore. They have to hold. I'll leave those there as a reminder. Longstreet is drawn first. It's not ideal, but he does what he can. McDowell recovers Reynolds. Heintzelman holds. Jackson sends his men forward. Stewart dresses his line. Fitz-John Porter dresses his line. Reno pulls his exhausted men out of the line. And McDowell's supporting block moves forward. He could have retreated with Reno's troops, but that would have left the bags wide open. And now we've got combat. This block and this block are artillery. They fire first. And the infantry assault. And there you have it, a surprising ending. The Federals lost a block, but it was an artillery block, and that doesn't count. So they still have 6, they're not broken. However, the South is broken with 4 block losses. They have lost. Pope has won. Second Bull Run. That was a good game.